Hi everyone, how are you? I am Turisbekova and I am your English teacher from school Dulati. Let's start today's our English lesson. Today's our lesson's unit's theme that its meaning is science, technology, engineering and math. Today's our lesson's theme is Do you speak science for 11th grade? Dear my students, learning scientific languages or words or text articles, it can be more difficult for you and for me too, because there are a lot of new words that came from Latin or Greek, and their structures or characteristics or plural forms can be more different. However, if you try to know them and if you never give up and learn on my time, I think that it can be for you easy and you can write scientific articles or text yourself. Okay, let's continue today's our English lesson. Our lesson's objectives is use appropriate subject-specific vocabulary and the syntax to talk about a range of familiar and some unfamiliar general and curricular topics. Dear my students, if you want to know these science languages, you must know 4 tips. First, technical vocabulary, plurals in science, science structures, and the characteristics of scientific text. Let's have a look at each of them. Technical vocabulary. Dear my girls and boys, clever girls and boys, you must know these prefixes and suffixes that come on in each scientific words or sentences. First, prefix photo, its meaning is light, for example, photography or photosynthesis. Second, prefix hydro, its meaning is water, for example, hydrotherapy or hydroelectric power. And itis, its suffix, its meaning is inflammation or infection, for example, tonsillitis or meningitis. And dear my clever students, you must know other words like logi, card. Logi, its meaning is study of, for example, biology or psychology. And the card, its meaning is relation to the heart, for example, cardiac muscle or cardiology. Okay, let's continue. Plurals in science. Dear my students, you must know these 3 rules. The first rule, in scientific words ending in "as" often take "I" endings. For example, cactus, cacti. Okay. The second rule, the scientific words ending in "ium" often take "er" endings. For example, bacterium, bacteria. Okay, the third rule, scientific words ending in "a" often take "a" endings. For example, vertebra, vertebrae. The third tip, dear my students, sentence structures. Remember, when you write scientific text or articles, you must often use the passive voice to give importance to action. For example, let's have a look at this example. This scientist filled a beaker with water. It is in active voice. Yes? Yes. Now you must change it in a passive voice. A beaker was filled with water. I hope that you understand. The fourth tip is characteristics of scientific texts. You must know them. Use direct languages, logically structured, avoid words such as almost, about, nearly, etc. Include the writer's personal opinion. Okay, girls and boys, I hope that you understand my explain. And now let's watch this video.
Do you speak science? Learning a STEM subject can be like learning a whole new language. Technical vocabulary. A lot of scientific language has roots that come from Latin or Greek. If you learn the meaning of these common roots, you can work out the meaning of new scientific words that you haven't seen before. For example, the prefix ar-thr comes from the Greek word arthrosi, which means joint. When we combine that with the suffix itis, which means infection or inflammation, we get the word arthritis. Arthritis is an inflammation of the joints. Plurals. The way in which we use plural forms in STEM subjects is also unusual. We often encounter irregular plurals because of the word's Greek or Latin origin. For example, the word cactus doesn't become cactuses, as expected, but instead becomes cacti. Sentence structures. Scientific writing often uses the passive voice to give importance to actions rather than the person who performed them. For example, we would use the sentence, "A beaker was filled with water," rather than, "The scientist filled a beaker with water." Characteristics of scientific texts. Scientific writing has some characteristics that tend to utilize statistics and facts and make objective statements rather than giving subjective descriptions using adjectives. Learning to understand and write scientific texts in English can be tricky for both native English speakers and for people learning English as a second language. However, it's important to keep practicing and not give up.
Yes, my dear students, you must never give up if you want to know the scientific languages and if you want to speak in scientific languages. Okay, let's practice by doing these tasks. Task 1, answer the questions. First question, which languages does a lot of scientific language come from? The second question, how is the formation of plurals different in scientific writing? The third question, what is the characteristic of scientific texts? The first question, what is the writer's attitude towards learning technical vocabulary? Task 2, make completed phrases using these words: scientific, personal, adjective, technical, common, and sentence. Dear my students, I hope that you understand today's my lesson and it was so interesting for you and useful. If you understand today's lesson and if you haven't got any question for me, you can choose the second picture, the sun which is shining. If you have some question for me, you can choose the first pictures, that cloud which is crying. I am so happy to teach you today, dear my students. See you next time. Thank you for your attention.